Kira was a young alien girl from the planet Psyloth, a world far from Earth. The people of Psyloth were different from humans in many ways. Their bodies were made for environments that Earth could not offer, and their understanding of life, reproduction, and family was unique to their species. They did not experience pregnancy in the way humans did. Instead, their young were born through a different, less emotional process which Kira had always found confusing. For years, Kira had been fascinated by humans. She studied their biology and learned about how they lived and loved. What intrigued her the most, though, was the concept of human pregnancy. It seemed so personal, so full of emotion and wonder. She had read about it in books, watched Earth documentaries, and even attended virtual lessons from human experts. But there was one thing Kira couldn't understand. What did it feel like? She wasn't satisfied with just reading about pregnancy or hearing others talk about it. Kira wanted to experience it for herself. She knew it might be a strange request, but after months of debating, she finally decided to approach someone who could help her understand. Dr. Ethan Wallace was one of the most respected human scientists, specializing in reproductive biology. Kira had studied his work for a long time. She admired his dedication to human health and his compassion for his patients. One quiet evening, Kira stood nervously outside the door to Dr. Wallace's laboratory. She had rehearsed her words over and over again, but now, in front of him, she wasn't sure if she could speak them. Dr. Wallace was an older man with a kind face that showed years of wisdom. When Kira walked into his lab, she felt small in the bright, clinical space filled with machines and tools she didn't understand. Yet she wasn't here to learn about machines. She was here to ask about something deeply personal. "Dr. Wallace," she began, her voice trembling, "I have a request. Something unusual." Dr. Wallace looked up from his desk, surprised to see an alien in his lab. He'd worked with other extraterrestrial species before, but he had never expected a request like this. "What is it, Kira?" he asked, his voice calm and welcoming. Kira took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. "I've been studying human pregnancy for a long time. I've read about it, watched it, but I don't understand it fully. I want to experience it. I want to know what it feels like." Dr. Wallace blinked, surprised by the boldness of her request. He had dealt with many scientific inquiries, but this one was different. "You want to experience pregnancy?" he repeated, his tone uncertain. "Yes," Kira said, her voice gaining strength. "I want to know what it's like to carry a child, to feel what humans feel during that time. I believe it will help me understand not only human biology better, but also the emotional connections involved. My species has no concept of this. I need to know what it's like to be a mother in your way." Dr. Wallace stared at her for a long moment, trying to understand her motivation. "You realize that pregnancy is not just physical," he said slowly. "It changes you emotionally, mentally. It's not an experience that can be easily controlled or reversed." Kira nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "I know, but I believe it's the only way I can truly understand humans. To experience it for myself, not just through data and books." He sighed, his mind racing with possibilities and concerns. This was not a typical experiment. Kira was asking to undergo a transformation that was both personal and risky. It was one thing to study human pregnancy, but it was another thing entirely to let someone live through it, especially someone from another species. "You're asking for a lot, Kira," he said, his voice serious. "This could have serious effects on your health, and for an alien like you, your body may not react in the way we expect. It could be dangerous." "I understand the risks," Kira replied, her voice steady, "but I'm willing to take them. This is something I need to do, not just for me, but to understand humans in a way that no one ever has before. Please, Dr. Wallace, I can't just read about it forever." Dr. Wallace felt a tug of empathy for her. He had never met an alien quite like Kira. Her determination was clear, and yet he couldn't shake the worry that this experiment might be too much for her. Still, he understood the drive for knowledge. He had spent his entire career studying human biology. trying to understand how life worked. Perhaps this was simply the next step. "I'll help you," he said at last. "But we'll need to take things slow. We'll need to run tests first, see if your body can handle human pregnancy. There are a lot of variables we need to consider, and I want to make sure you're safe." Kira smiled softly. "Thank you, Dr. Wallace. I won't let you down." As they began discussing the details, Kira felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. She was about to undergo something that could change her forever. But the more she thought about it, the more she knew it was the right thing to do. She wasn't just curious about pregnancy. She wanted to understand what it meant to be human, to feel connected in a way that went beyond biology. The first step was simple: preparation. Dr. Wallace explained the procedures she would undergo to allow her alien body to experience pregnancy in a human way. It would take time, but Kira was willing to do whatever it took. In the coming weeks, Dr. Wallace would run tests and Kira would undergo a process of biological adjustments that would allow her to carry a child. It would be difficult and complex, but for the first time in her life, Kira felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer just a curious observer of human life. She was about to experience it firsthand. And so, the journey began. The days following Kira's decision felt like a blur. She had never imagined that she would be standing in a human laboratory, preparing for such a profound change. The excitement in her was tempered by a deep sense of uncertainty. She was about to undergo something no one of her species had ever attempted. Pregnancy, with all its mysteries, was something that humans experienced. But it wasn't a concept her alien species understood fully. Yet, there she was, determined to become the first Silothian to experience it. Dr. Ethan Wallace was as calm and collected as ever, but Kira could tell that he was carefully planning each step of the process. He had assured her that the first phase would be straightforward, just some tests and adjustments to her body. But as the days went by, Kira could feel the weight of the unknown growing heavier on her shoulders. There were so many things she didn't understand, and despite her preparations, a part of her feared what was to come. At first, the laboratory became her second home. Kira was comfortable with technology, having grown up with advanced machines on Sciloth, but the human medical equipment was strange. The soft hum of the machines, the sterile white walls, and the ever-present scent of antiseptic were overwhelming. She had to admit, though, that Dr. Wallace's presence was reassuring. His calm demeanor gave her a sense of safety, even when she was surrounded by uncertainty. One morning, as Kira sat in the lab, Dr. Wallace entered with a clipboard, his face serious but not unkind. "Kira," he said softly, "today's the first step. Are you ready?" Kira took a deep breath. She had spent the last few weeks in preparation, learning about human biology, the way pregnancy worked, and what her body would go through. She had even trained her mind to remain calm. But the truth was she was nervous. "Yes, Dr. Wallace, I'm ready." The process began with a series of tests. Kira had never had any sort of medical procedure like this before. She lay back on a bed, and Dr. Wallace attached electrodes to her skin, measuring her vitals. He was quiet, focused, and methodical, explaining everything to her in simple terms. Kira was grateful for his patience. Her body was not designed for this, and every adjustment would be a challenge. As the test progressed, Kira began to feel an odd sense of anticipation. Her body reacted to the procedures in ways she hadn't expected. The changes weren't immediate, but she could feel something happening within her. A gentle warmth spread through her and her heart rate picked up slightly. It wasn't painful, but it was certainly strange. "I'm going to introduce the first stage of the procedure now," Dr. Wallace said, breaking her concentration. "This will allow your body to adapt to the early stages of pregnancy. We'll monitor your progress closely." Kira nodded, trying to ignore the fluttering sensation in her stomach. The machine above her hummed to life as Dr. Wallace made the necessary adjustments. She could feel a slight pull in her abdomen, as if something inside her was shifting. It was uncomfortable, but not unbearable. Her body wasn't used to this, and the foreign sensations left her feeling vulnerable, but she held herself still. Minutes passed, and soon the procedure was over. Dr. Wallace checked the readings on his screen. "Everything looks good so far," he said, his voice calm. "We're in the right direction. How do you feel?" Kira hesitated for a moment, considering her response. "I'm okay, it's different, but it's not as bad as I expected." Dr. Wallace smiled and made a few notes on his clipboard. "That's a good sign. Now we'll let you rest for a bit. Tomorrow we'll begin the next phase." Kira sat up slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle around her. Her mind raced with questions. Was this what it felt like for humans? The process had just begun, and yet it already felt like her body was becoming something new. She could only imagine what the next few weeks would bring. As the days passed, Kira's body underwent a gradual transformation. At first it was subtle, a slight swelling in her abdomen, a bit of dizziness now and then. But as the weeks wore on, the changes became more noticeable. Kira was growing, both physically and emotionally. The once clear separation between her alien nature and the human experience of pregnancy was slowly fading away. Dr. Wallace was there every step of the way, constantly checking her progress, running more tests, and explaining what was happening. "Your body is adapting," he explained one day. "It's strange, but you're handling it well. We're just getting started, though. The real challenge will come in the later stages, when your body will begin to feel the weight of carrying a child." Kira listened carefully, trying to understand what would happen next. The idea of carrying a child, something that was so deeply personal for humans, was both thrilling and intimidating. She had learned about the process, but nothing could have prepared her for the feelings swirling inside her now. One afternoon, Dr. Wallace asked her to sit with him in his office. "There's something I want to discuss," he said, his voice more serious than usual. "You're doing great so far, Kira, but I've noticed something. You're not just physically changing, you're becoming more emotionally involved." Kira blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "Pregnancy is not just a physical experience," Dr. Wallace explained. "It's emotional too. For humans, it's a deeply personal journey. You've been studying the science, but I think you're starting to understand the emotional side of it as well. How are you feeling? How does this change affect you?" Kira sat quietly, thinking about his words. It had been easy to focus on the scientific side of things, on the tests, the measurements, the results. But now she realized that something inside her was changing in ways she hadn't expected. It wasn't just her body that was adapting to this experience. Her mind was beginning to shift as well. "I feel connected to it," she said slowly, her voice soft. "Like I'm not just learning about pregnancy, but I'm living it. I don't know how to explain it, but it feels real now. More real than I thought it would." Dr. Wallace nodded, his expression understanding. "That's the part that's hard to explain. The science is one thing, but the emotional impact is just as important. Pregnancy changes how you see yourself, how you see the world. It's not something that can be fully understood through data alone." Kira thought about this for a long time after their conversation. She had come to Dr. Wallace's lab with the goal of understanding human pregnancy, but now, it felt like something much deeper. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was part of the experience, and that realization both excited and terrified her. Over the next few days, the changes continued. Kira's body grew heavier, and the emotional weight of the experience began to settle in. She had no idea how much this journey would truly affect her. But one thing was clear. She was no longer just an alien girl trying to understand human biology. She was becoming something new, something she hadn't expected. And it was both thrilling and overwhelming at the same time. The days turned into weeks, and Kira's journey through the process of human pregnancy became more intense. Each day, her body changed in ways she couldn't fully understand. At first, it was just small things, an odd sensation in her stomach, or a brief wave of dizziness. But now, the changes were more noticeable. Her belly was beginning to swell, and the weight of carrying something inside her was growing heavier with each passing day. Kira had always been a curious person. On her homeworld, she was known for her determination and thirst for knowledge. But now, as she lay in Dr. Wallace's lab, Feeling the subtle shift in her body, she realized that knowledge alone couldn't explain the full experience of pregnancy. It wasn't just the science. It was the emotions. The physical changes were only part of the story. She couldn't deny the feeling that came with each passing day. Something was growing inside her, not just in her body, but in her heart and mind. It was something she hadn't expected. She had thought that she would simply observe the physical effects of pregnancy and then analyze them from a scientific standpoint. But as she lay there on the examination table, the weight of it all became clear. Pregnancy wasn't just a physical state. It was a deeply emotional experience, one that was slowly becoming part of her. Kira tried to focus on the scientific aspects of the process, but it was getting harder. She had learned all about the human reproductive system, the hormones, the stages of development, but nothing could prepare her for the emotional weight of carrying a child. She had never experienced anything like this in her life. It was as if she was both the scientist and the subject of the experiment, constantly shifting between the two roles. One afternoon, Dr. Wallace entered the lab with a clipboard in his hand, looking over the results of the latest tests. He smiled when he saw Kira sitting up, her posture more relaxed than it had been in the early days of the process. "How are you feeling today?" he asked, his voice kind but also full of concern. Kira took a moment before answering. She was learning that the changes happening within her weren't just physical, they were deeply tied to her emotions. She could feel a warmth growing inside her that wasn't just related to the pregnancy itself. It was the growing bond between herself and this experience. "I feel strange," she said slowly, looking down at her swelling belly. "Like something is changing inside me that I can't fully explain. It's not just my body, it's my mind too." Dr. Wallace nodded, clearly understanding. "That's completely normal," he said. "Pregnancy isn't just a physical transformation. It affects your emotions, your thoughts. It's an entire experience, not just something that happens to your body." Kira looked up at him, her eyes wide with both curiosity and concern. "But why? Why does it affect so many parts of me? I thought it would just be a process, something I could observe." "It's hard to explain," Dr. Wallace admitted. "Even humans don't always fully understand it. The emotions that come with pregnancy are tied to deep instincts, ones that go beyond logic and reason. It's about connection. Connection to the child you're carrying. Connection to the people around you. It's an emotional journey, not just a biological one." Kira took in his words, trying to make sense of them. She had always thought of herself as a logical thinker, someone who could separate emotion from reason. But now, as her body grew and changed, she realized that logic didn't always apply. Her emotions were tangled up with the physical changes, and no amount of reading or studying could have prepared her for that. In the days that followed, Kira became more aware of the emotional changes happening within her. She found herself feeling more vulnerable than she had ever been before. Little things made her emotional. Certain smells, the way people spoke to her, even the way her body reacted to the growing life inside her. It was as though every sense was heightened, every feeling more intense. One evening, after a particularly difficult day in the lab, Kira found herself sitting alone in the small lounge area of Dr. Wallace's lab. She stared out the window, looking at the distant stars. The vastness of space had always felt comforting to her, like a reminder that she was just one small part of a much bigger universe. But tonight, it felt different. She felt small in a way she had never experienced before. She wasn't just an alien girl anymore. She wasn't just a scientist observing the pregnancy process. She was someone who was becoming a part of it. She was learning what it meant to feel vulnerable, to feel the weight of responsibility before even knowing the child she carried. The thought both terrified and comforted her. Dr. Wallace entered the lounge quietly, noticing Kira's far-off gaze. He sat beside her, offering a comforting silence. After a moment, he spoke gently. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed, Kira. You're going through something that no one else can truly understand. You're experiencing human pregnancy, and that's not something that can be explained easily. Kira looked at him, a sense of gratitude filling her. "I didn't expect this," she said quietly. "I thought I would just study it. I thought it would be a simple experiment, but now I feel connected to it, connected to something I don't even fully understand." Dr. Wallace smiled warmly. "That's because pregnancy isn't something you can study from a distance. It's something you have to experience. It's a connection between you and the life you're carrying, and also between you and the people around you." Kira nodded slowly, her mind racing with new thoughts. She had come here to understand human pregnancy, but now she realized it wasn't just about knowledge. It was about experience, connection, and emotions that went beyond logic and reason. She wasn't just studying pregnancy anymore, she was living it. As the days passed, the emotional changes became even more pronounced. Kira found herself reflecting on her own life, her own people, and the journey she had undertaken. She began to question things she had never questioned before: the meaning of connection, the importance of relationships, and the true nature of life itself. She had always thought of herself as an outsider. Her species was so different from humans. But now, as she felt the life growing inside her, she realized that perhaps, in some ways, she wasn't as different as she had always believed. Pregnancy was a universal experience. It was something that connected every species, every form of life in ways that no one could fully explain. One night, as Kira lay in bed, her hand resting gently on her belly, she felt a strange sensation, a soft flutter, almost like a tiny movement inside her. Her heart skipped a beat and she smiled softly. It was the first sign that this strange emotional journey was becoming real. It was no longer just an experiment. It was her story now. The weeks were beginning to blur into one another, each day bringing more physical and emotional changes. Kira had never anticipated how much the process would affect her. As her body continued to grow and change, she felt a constant weight, both literal and figurative. The early stages of pregnancy had been uncomfortable, but they were manageable. Now, as her belly swelled and her body became more sensitive, Kira felt the strain of carrying a child. There were days when the weight in her abdomen was almost unbearable. The simple tasks she had once taken for granted, walking, standing, even sitting, became more difficult. Kira would often find herself out of breath, her body struggling to adjust to the new life growing inside her. There were moments when she wondered if she was truly cut out for this experience, but the thought of turning back never crossed her mind. She had come this far, and she couldn't stop now. Despite the physical discomfort, Kira found herself more attached to the child growing inside her. The emotional connection, which had been distant at first, was now undeniable. She could feel the tiny movements within her, a soft flutter here and there, reminding her that this experience was real. Each movement was a reminder that she was no longer just an observer, she was a part of this process. Her body, her emotions, everything was changing. Dr. Wallace had been monitoring her progress closely, running tests and checking her vitals regularly. He had warned her that the later stages of pregnancy would be the most challenging, and he wasn't wrong. Kira had hoped that the discomfort would subside, but it only intensified. It wasn't just the weight of her body, but the emotional strain as well. She found herself growing more sensitive to things she never thought would affect her. Small comments, the way people looked at her, even the way she looked at herself. One afternoon, Dr. Wallace sat down beside her in the lab, his expression serious. "Kira, I know this is difficult," he said, his voice gentle. "The physical changes are taking a toll on your body, and the emotional strain is normal. But you need to listen to your body. You need to rest when you can." Kira sighed and nodded, though she wasn't sure if she could ever really rest. She felt as if her mind was always racing, constantly processing new feelings, new sensations. It was hard to keep up with everything that was happening to her. "I'm fine," she replied, though her voice lacked the usual certainty. "It's just harder than I thought it would be." Dr. Wallace gave her a soft smile. "You're doing well, Kira. It's just that pregnancy is an intense process. It's natural to feel this way, but you can't ignore your body's signals. If you don't take care of yourself, things could get worse. Kira knew he was right, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this experience than just the physical changes. She had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. The emotions she had once kept at a distance were now flooding her, leaving her struggling to keep control. She had always prided herself on being strong, on being logical. But now, she felt like she was losing her grip on everything. That night, after Dr. Wallace had left for the day, Kira found herself alone in her room. The laboratory was quiet, the only sound the hum of the machines that monitored her progress. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand resting gently on her swollen belly. For the first time since the experiment had begun, Kira allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she had chosen. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, ashamed of her weakness. She had never cried before, not in front of anyone, not in front of herself. She had always been the strong one, the one who kept her emotions in check. But now, as the baby inside her shifted and moved, Kira couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. What was she doing? Was she really ready for this? She had come so far, but now the reality of what she had chosen seemed so much more daunting. The thought of giving birth, of becoming a mother, those things had always seemed like distant concepts. But now, they were becoming real. And with them came a flood of emotions that Kira wasn't sure she was ready for. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, there was a soft knock at the door. She quickly wiped her face and stood up, trying to compose herself. When she opened the door, Dr. Wallace stood there, his expression gentle but concerned. "Kira, I thought you might be here," he said, stepping inside when she nodded for him to enter. "I wanted to check in on you." Kira gave him a small smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, Dr. Wallace, just a bit tired, that's all." Dr. Wallace studied her for a moment, clearly not convinced by her words. "You don't have to pretend with me, Kira," he said softly. "This is hard, I know. It's okay to feel overwhelmed." Kira hesitated before speaking, her voice quiet. "I didn't expect it to be like this," she admitted. "The physical changes are hard enough, but it's the emotions. I never thought I would feel so lost." Dr. Wallace placed a hand on her shoulder, offering a quiet comfort. "You're not alone, Kira. I'm here for you, and you have the support of everyone here. You're going through something unique, but that doesn't mean you have to do it all on your own." Kira nodded, her eyes brimming with tears once again. This time, she didn't try to hide them. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I don't know what I would do without you." Dr. Wallace smiled warmly. "You're stronger than you think, Kira. Pregnancy isn't just about physical strength, it's about emotional strength, too. And you're learning that, one step at a time." Kira smiled faintly, though the weight of her emotions still hung heavy in her chest. She wasn't sure if she was ready for the challenges that lay ahead, but she knew one thing. She wasn't alone anymore. She had Dr. Wallace, and she had the connection to this child growing inside her, and that in itself gave her a strength she never knew she had. The days had become weeks, and the weeks had turned into months. Kira's body had transformed in ways she hadn't thought possible. What once felt like an experiment had now become a profound journey, a journey that was changing her in ways she never expected. The pregnancy had begun to take its final steps, and soon, the day would come when the life growing inside her would be real, no longer just a part of her studies, but a part of her story. It was early morning when Kira woke up feeling something strange, a pressure in her lower abdomen that hadn't been there before. She had grown used to the physical discomforts of pregnancy, but this was different. This was a sharp, new feeling. She sat up in bed, placing her hand gently on her belly, and for a moment the world around her felt still, as though the entire universe was waiting. The tiny movements inside her had become familiar now. She had grown accustomed to the soft flutters, the little nudges, as if the baby was telling her, "I'm here." But this pressure was something new, something that made Kira's heart race with both excitement and nervousness. Kira stood slowly, her feet touching the cold floor of the lab. She wasn't sure what to do. She had read about the signs of impending labor, but nothing could prepare her for the feeling of the unknown, the feeling of her body preparing to bring a new life into the world. For a moment, she was overwhelmed by the thought. She had no idea how to be a mother. She had never even seen what it meant to carry and nurture a child in her own species, let alone in the way humans did. As she walked to the small mirror in the corner of the room, she caught her reflection. Her once slim figure had expanded with the pregnancy, her belly rounded and heavy with life. But beyond the physical changes, it was the way she looked at herself that had changed the most. She wasn't just Kira, the curious alien girl, anymore. She was Kira, the one carrying the future inside her. She could feel it, like a deep connection between her and the child within her. The emotions she had tried so hard to ignore in the past weeks were now too strong to deny. She had become attached, deeply attached to this child. Even though she didn't know what it would be like to hold it in her arms, she already loved it. It wasn't just an experiment anymore. It was real. This was her journey, and it was becoming more than she could have ever imagined. Kira took a deep breath, steadying herself. She needed to tell Dr. Wallace she needed help, but more than that, she needed to share this moment with him. He had been by her side through every step of this journey, and now, it was time for him to witness the next step too. Dr. Wallace had always been kind, patient, and understanding, but she had also noticed something different in him as the pregnancy progressed. There had been moments when his eyes softened, moments when he looked at her with something deeper than just professional concern. Kira had noticed the way he seemed to care for her, not just as a subject of study, but as someone who was sharing in this incredible experience with him. She walked quickly to the lab where Dr. Wallace usually spent his mornings. As she entered, he looked up from his work, his expression concerned. "Kira, is everything okay?" he asked, standing up from his desk. Kira nodded, though her heart was racing. "I think it's time," she said softly, her voice uncertain. Dr. Wallace's eyes widened slightly. He had been expecting the day to come soon, but hearing Kira say it made it feel real. "Are you sure?" he asked, walking toward her. Kira placed her hand gently on her belly. "I don't know how to explain it," she said, "but I feel like something is happening. Something's different." Dr. Wallace nodded, his professional calm taking over. "All right, let's get you checked in. It's time to prepare for what's coming." He helped her to a nearby chair, and they went through the usual test to check her vitals and the baby's health. But as the minutes passed, Kira couldn't stop thinking about the emotional side of it. How had she gotten here? How had she gone from a curious observer of human pregnancy to someone who was experiencing it herself, living it, feeling every step? Dr. Wallace glanced at her as he finished taking some readings. "You've done incredibly well, Kira. Your body has adjusted in ways I didn't expect, but I have to admit I didn't think this would be so emotional for you." Kira looked up at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. "I didn't expect it either," she said, quietly, "but I can't ignore it anymore. I feel connected to this child. It's like I'm not just carrying it in my body, but I'm carrying it in my heart." Dr. Wallace smiled, his expression softening. "That's what I meant, Kira. Pregnancy is about more than the body. It's about what happens inside you emotionally, and I can see that now. You've learned something that no textbook could have taught you." Kira nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace settle in her. The physical discomforts had been hard, and the emotional roller coaster was sometimes overwhelming. But in this moment, as she sat with Dr. Wallace, she realized something important. She wasn't just experiencing pregnancy for the sake of science. She was living it for herself and for the child she carried. And that was enough. As the hours passed, Dr. Wallace and Kira worked together, preparing for the final stages of the process. The baby's movements had become more pronounced, a constant reminder that the moment of birth was approaching. Kira was filled with anticipation, but also a sense of calm. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but she knew that she was ready for it. That evening, when the time finally came, Kira found herself surrounded by the team Dr. Wallace had assembled to assist her. The lab had been transformed into a quiet, calming space designed to make the experience as comfortable as possible. The lights were dim and soft music played in the background. Kira lay on the bed, surrounded by the people who had supported her through this journey. Dr. Wallace was by her side, his calm presence a constant reassurance. And as she breathed through the contractions, she felt the weight of everything she had gone through, the physical challenges, the emotional struggles, and the growing bond with the life inside her. When the moment came, Kira pushed through the pain, feeling the baby move inside her until finally she heard the sound she had been waiting for, the cry of a newborn. Tears filled her eyes as she gazed at the tiny being, the child she had carried for so long. It was real. It was finally here. Dr. Wallace placed the baby gently in her arms, and Kira's heart swelled with love and awe. For the first time, she understood the depth of what it meant to be a parent. It wasn't just about biology or the science of pregnancy. It was about the connection, the bond that couldn't be explained with facts and numbers. It was something deeper, something she had only truly understood now that she held her child in her arms. As she looked down at the baby, Kira realized that this journey had changed her in ways she couldn't have imagined. She had come to Earth to study, to understand human pregnancy, but now she had experienced it for herself. And in doing so, she had discovered something more, something about herself, about life, and about the incredible power of connection